General Hospital will reveal. As nightfall swept over the city of Port Charles, a heavy stillness settled in Alexis's office. She stood motionless by the window. The dim glow of the desk lamp casting elongated shadows across her face, revealing every line etched by years of hardship and inner conflict. The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by the quiet hum of the city beyond the glass. But inside her mind, the chaos was building. Fragmented memories, stray observations, inconsistencies in stories that no longer added up. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and senseless, were slowly falling into place. And the picture they formed was one she had desperately hoped to avoid. A sickening realization gripped her. The person responsible for the nearly fatal tampering of Rick's car brakes was Kristina, her own daughter. The thought struck like a bolt of lightning, lighting up the dark corners of her doubt. Alexis felt her breath catch in her throat, as if by recognizing the truth, she was breathing in its bitter weight. This wasn't just a reckless mistake, it was a near tragedy that could have cost a man his life. And yet, what chilled her more deeply than Kristina's impulsive act was the unbearable knowledge that Molly, her gentle, principled daughter, still had no idea. In that moment, a memory resurfaced with brutal clarity. Alexis could see Kristina's eyes from that fateful night, wide, frantic, unfocused. There was something in her daughter's face that hadn't sat right. Something too evasive to be ignored. Kristina had rushed away from the scene, only to be led quietly back to Charlie's pub by Lucky, who had offered a fabricated story to conceal what really happened. At the time, Alexis had suspected something darker lurking beneath the surface, but her instincts had been buried under a mother's instinct to protect. But Alexis was not easily fooled. Years of defending clients, interrogating motives, and studying human behavior had sharpened her ability to detect deception. She had spent her life peeling back facades, both legal and personal. And now, the facade that Kristina had so clumsily erected was crumbling beneath the weight of Alexis's scrutiny. It wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was the truth. Harsh, irreversible, and deeply personal. Alexis knew that Kristina believed she had been targeting Ava, not Rick. She knew her daughter would never intentionally seek to harm someone like Molly's father. But that intention did nothing to soften the blow. Mistake or not, someone could have died. And Alexis was now left with the unbearable burden of knowledge. Teetering on the edge of an impossible decision. She stood there, rooted to the spot, the room growing colder as night deepened around her. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the edge of the desk, her mind spiraling between outrage, fear, and heartbreak. How could she face Molly? How could she look into her youngest daughter's trusting eyes and hide something so dangerous, so destructive? Yet how could she expose Kristina, knowing it might lead to arrest, prosecution, even prison? The walls of her office, once a place of order and logic, now felt like they were closing in. The truth she had uncovered was a double-edged sword. One that could slice through the fragile peace of her family. And the worst part? Alexis knew this was only the beginning. What she did next would define not only her relationship with her daughters, but the integrity she'd spent her whole life trying to uphold. Outside, the city kept moving, unaware of the storm silently building inside one woman's heart. As the police launched an official investigation into the tampered brake system, Alexis felt the invisible pressure tightening around her like a vice. The walls were closing in, not just around Kristina, but around Alexis herself. Every passing hour seemed to bring new details, new witnesses, and the possibility of forensic evidence that could link the crime to her daughter. The illusion of safety was unraveling. And Alexis could no longer pretend this was a burden she might somehow escape. She couldn't sit idle. She couldn't pretend ignorance. But what she also couldn't do, what every fiber of her being refused to let her do, was turn Kristina over to the authorities. As a mother, Alexis was no stranger to crisis. She had weathered storms, covered mistakes, and paid the emotional price for protecting her daughters more times than she could count. But this was different. The danger Kristina had created was not abstract. It was real. Concrete, and nearly fatal. Rick could have died. And even if Kristina's true target had been Ava, even if her intentions were rooted in anger rather than cruelty, the fact remained. Lives had been put in jeopardy. A mistake, no matter how unintended, could not be absolved by remorse alone. The weight of her dilemma was soul-crushing. Alexis stood on a knife's edge between two worlds, between two daughters who represented everything she was trying to hold together. On one side was Kristina, impulsive and passionate, haunted by her emotions and constantly battling for control. She was fragile beneath her bravado, and now she was teetering on the edge of a devastating fall. If this went public, if charges were filed, Kristina's life could be shattered, marked forever by a crime she never intended to commit. On the other side stood Molly, steadfast, honest. The daughter Alexis could always count on to do the right thing. But what would Molly do, what would she feel, if she discovered the truth? If she learned that her mother had chosen to protect Kristina rather than expose the secret that nearly cost Rick his life? It wasn't just the betrayal of justice, it was the betrayal of trust. And Alexis feared that if she kept Molly in the dark much longer, the fallout could destroy their bond for good. She remembered vividly the last time she had shielded Kristina from the fallout after Jagger's death, a decision that had nearly cost them all. That incident had left deep cracks in her own moral compass, cracks she had hoped never to revisit. But now she was here again, standing at another impossible crossroads. Forced to choose between truth and protection, between justice and motherhood. And this time, the stakes were even higher. The truth, Alexis knew, had the power to burn everything down. Her relationship with Molly, Kristina's future, the fragile fabric of their family. But silence, too, came with a cost. It would eat away at her from the inside out, corroding everything she valued. The knowledge of Kristina's crime would become a secret too heavy to carry, yet too dangerous to release. As she paced the room, Alexis realized that whatever decision she made, there would be no clean resolution. No sense of triumph. Only damage control. The kind that left scars. And somewhere, deep in her gut, she feared that no matter what path she chose, someone she loved would never forgive her. Wondering just how much longer she could keep Molly in the dark, Alexis began to quietly prepare for the storm she knew was coming. She wasn't gathering evidence to condemn Kristina, far from it. Every step she took was a mother's desperate attempt to get ahead of the truth before it consumed them all. She reviewed every police bulletin, every whisper of the investigation, every clue that could hint at the moment when the secret would explode into the open. The truth wasn't a question of if anymore, it was only a matter of when. And Alexis understood that no amount of stalling, no carefully crafted lie, could hold it back forever. Whether it was tomorrow, or next week, or in a month, she knew that eventually the delicate facade would crack. The police might trace the brake tampering back to Kristina. Or Lucky, burdened by guilt and torn by his own moral compass, might finally confess what he knew. Perhaps Kristina herself would break under the emotional strain. However it happened, Alexis knew she had to be ready for the moment when the truth no longer belonged solely to her. When it would belong to everyone. She started keeping notes, small, encrypted. Hidden in a locked drawer, recording the timeline of events, compiling inconsistencies in Kristina's story, and tracking the course of the investigation. It wasn't a betrayal. In Alexis's eyes, it was a safeguard. A way to ensure that if the world turned against her daughter, someone would be able to explain the why, not just the what. But even as she moved with calculated calm, Alexis's heart was unraveling. She couldn't shake the image of Molly, so bright, so principled, learning the truth not from her, but from the cold, sterile words of a police report or the judgmental whisper of a news broadcast. What would Molly feel when she realized her mother had known? That Alexis had discovered the crime and chosen silence. Would she understand that Alexis was trying to protect Kristina, or would she see it only as betrayal? Would she ever forgive her for keeping such a devastating secret? And what would she see in Kristina? A reckless, selfish woman who nearly killed her father? Or a broken soul who made one terrible mistake out of pain, confusion, and a misguided sense of justice? Alexis feared the answer. She feared that the very act of protecting one daughter would cost her the other. That by shielding Kristina from the consequences, she might lose Molly forever. The thought hollowed her out. There were no easy answers, no path forward without collateral damage. But she kept walking that path anyway, because she had no choice. Because she loved them both, equally, achingly, and would carry the burden of this secret until it crushed her, if it meant giving them even a moment of safety. Each time she looked into Molly's eyes and said nothing, a part of Alexis withered. And each time she watched Kristina try to hold herself together, she felt her own soul fracture with the weight of the silence she maintained. She knew that eventually, she would have to look them both in the eye, two daughters. Two hearts she had nurtured and protected, and admit that she had chosen to protect one by deceiving the other. And in that moment, Alexis would be forced to reckon with the cost of love. The price of silence, and the irreversible consequences of a mother's impossible choice. Inside Alexis, a storm was gathering, slow, steady, and relentless. Always had a way of surfacing. It clawed its way out from beneath lies, excuses, and good intentions, bringing with it a trail of wreckage and regret. Alexis knew this well. She had seen it before. Both in her personal life and her legal career. And now, that truth was circling closer, threatening to tear apart everything she had tried to protect. The secret about Kristina loomed like a shadow she could no longer outrun. It wasn't just the knowledge that her daughter had tampered with a vehicle's brakes, it was the understanding that someone almost died because of it. That secret wasn't just a burden. It was a ticking bomb. The weight of it pressed heavier each day, and Alexis felt it tightening around her throat every time she tried to go about her routine. Every time she looked Molly in the eye and pretended that everything was fine. She was nearing a choice. One that would define not only her role as a mother but also the integrity she had spent a lifetime trying to preserve. On one side stood Kristina, raw, impulsive. Teetering dangerously on the edge of a life-altering consequence. Alexis could feel her daughter's fragility, masked by bravado. Slipping further away from reason with every moment the truth stayed hidden. She wanted to save her, to protect her from the harshness of a justice system that might not consider her intent. Only her actions. But on the other side was Molly, so bright, so steadfast in her values, a young woman who had always trusted in the honesty and fairness of her mother. And Alexis knew in her soul that Molly deserved the truth, no matter how painful, no matter how damaging. If she withheld it, if she chose to protect Kristina at the cost of deceiving Molly, she risked losing that trust forever. It wasn't just about morality, it was about what kind of mother she wanted to be. One who shielded a child from consequence. Or one who honored the truth. No matter how devastating. This decision was not just between two daughters. It was a battle within herself, between the instinct to protect and the responsibility to confront. And Alexis felt paralyzed by the gravity of that internal war. She had spent her life standing for what was right in the courtroom, but now, in the courtroom of her conscience. Every verdict felt like a betrayal to someone she loved. As the storm raged on inside her, Alexis understood that time was running out. The truth would not remain buried forever. When it emerged, as it always did, it would bring with it a reckoning. And when that moment arrived, Alexis would have to stand before her daughters, one shattered by guilt, the other shattered by betrayal, and face the consequences of her silence. She knew she couldn't save them both. But she also knew that inaction was a choice in itself. And so she stood at the edge of that decision, battered by the storm within, knowing full well that no matter which path she chose, someone's heart would break, and so might her own. Stay tuned as the emotional storm continues to gather force in General Hospital, where the fragile threads holding the Davis family together threaten to snap. The secrets, the guilt, and the pain are no longer dormant, they are rising to the surface, pulling each woman into a conflict that could redefine their lives forever. In the episodes to come, the simmering tension between Kristina and Molly will begin to erupt into a full-blown confrontation. What began as an unspoken unease between sisters, an untraceable shift in energy, a sense that something was being kept hidden, will soon become impossible to ignore. Molly, with her keen intuition and unwavering sense of justice, will begin to piece together the fragments of a truth too dangerous to remain buried. As she inches closer to uncovering the terrible secret that Kristina tampered with the brakes of the car Rick was driving, her world will begin to unravel. Molly's shock will give way to fury as the betrayal sets in. Her sister's reckless actions nearly cost her father his life, and worse still, her own mother, the woman who raised her to value honesty and responsibility, may have conspired to cover it up. The devastation will run deep. This isn't just about the accident. It's about trust. It's about family. It's about the horrifying realization that the people she believed in most have been lying to her face. Kristina, for her part, is spiraling. The guilt is eating her alive, gnawing at the edges of her confidence, breaking down her walls piece by piece. She never meant to hurt Rick, her anger was aimed elsewhere. Fueled by a complicated history with Ava and her own internal chaos. But intentions don't erase consequences. And now, with every passing day, she fears the moment her sister will find out. Kristina knows that Molly won't take the news lightly. Their relationship, once strained but recovering, may not survive the fallout. And caught in the middle of it all is Alexis. Her heart is torn in two. She can see the pain mounting in Kristina, and she can see the innocence in Molly slowly giving way to suspicion. As a mother, Alexis is suffocating under the weight of impossible choices. Protecting Kristina means lying to Molly. But telling Molly the truth could ruin Kristina's life, and possibly send her to prison. The walls are closing in, and Alexis knows that her silence, once meant to protect, has become a time bomb waiting to detonate. In the days ahead, Alexis will be forced to confront the full consequences of her decisions. She will have to reckon with the kind of mother she has become, and the mother she still wants to be. Will she stand firm in her silence to shield Kristina from prosecution? Or will her loyalty shift when she sees the pain etched across Molly's face? When she hears the heartbreak in her daughter's voice as the betrayal sets in? What happens next could redefine the Davis family forever. Will Molly take a stand against both her sister and her mother, demanding justice no matter the cost? Will Kristina finally confess, unable to bear the guilt any longer? And how far is Alexis willing to go to keep her family from falling apart completely? The battle lines are being drawn. Family, love, justice, and truth are on a collision course. And no one will emerge unscathed. Don't miss the next gripping chapters in this explosive storyline, because what's coming isn't just a family argument. It's war.